Hi everyone, it's Nicki here, and thanks for joining me again for another top 10. Now today I'm going to be sharing with you my top 10 works of literature from the 18th century. This is actually my second time filming this list. I did film it earlier and then I suddenly realised I'd missed out a really major work and one that I really love, and I don't know where my head was at when I wrote the list and left it off, but I thought I'll come back and correct it all and refilm for you all. So, kicking us straight off without any further ado, my favourite book in the number one spot for 18th century literature is Les Liaisons Dangereuses by Delaclos. Now, some of you may know this book from the film version with John Malkovich, and also they did a sort of modern day version with Sir Michel Gellar, Cruel Intentions. I think that was back in the 90s. I love every incarnation of this piece, the novel. I love the film, I've seen it on stage. There is an opera, I haven't heard the opera yet, but I'm really keen to. I should just apologise, I don't know how much you're going to be able to hear this, but the dust cart has actually just started going around collecting the rubbish, typically as soon as I started filming. So there may just be a little bit of noise in the background, but hopefully it won't be too distracting. Anyway, back to Liaisons Dangereuses. One of the things I love about this piece are the amazing characters. Valmont is such a great character, and you will find him making it onto my list of favourite historical fiction crushes, which I will be sharing with you all in due course. But there's also some really great strong female characters, and this is a novel in letters, which was a fairly popular form at this time, and it works so brilliantly in this piece. Now I think that's the dust cart leaving now, so we should be good after this. Moving along though, let's go to number 2. Number 2 on my list is The Sorrows of Young Werther by Goethe. Such a key piece for the era once again, same as Liaisons. It really deals a lot with the sort of existential crisis that seems to pervade the sort of feelings of some of the younger people at the time. If you think of some of the key figures of the era like Casanova, who we'll come back to later. There's this sense of the ego overriding everything else, and the sense of personal affliction, I guess. It's a almost semi-autobiographical piece for Goethe in some way, and it's one that I love, and it's just something you can come back and read again and again and get something different from as you get older. Number 3, The Monk by Lewis. So this is very much a Gothic piece. In some ways it's kind of takes Gothic to the next level though. I mean, if you think about works like Radcliffe, yes, they had some lurid details and skeletons in the closet, sometimes quite literally, but with Lewis's The Monk, that really sort of, he went all out. I mean, there's gore, there's satanic ritual, there's deflowering of young maidens going on galore. A wonderful piece, and if you're a student of the Gothic, then definitely one that should be on your list. Number 4, now this is the one I actually missed when I made the list the first time, and I'm not sure how I did it because I have copies of it behind me. You won't be able to see them, but they're kind of just below behind me here. And it is the full 12 volumes of The History of My Life by Casanova. So an autobiographical work detailing Casanova's various conquests and adventures. Obviously you kind of have to take it a little bit with a pinch of salt because I'm pretty sure he embellished quite a lot all over the place, but this is another of those works that really offers you a great glimpse of 18th century life, even if you say yes, it's exaggerated, but just thinking about the way people lived, their views on sex and other social issues, this is a great book just to really get into that. Number 5, sticking with the sex, which in fact quite a few of the books on this list are sort of have a strong connotation with sex, but I think that's just a obsession of the era. So this one is The 120 Days of Sodom by the Marquis de Sade. This may seem an interesting book to pick for the list. I actually like de Sade. I think his writing's not the best, but he offers such a fascinating view of the 18th century mind in relation to gender roles, sex, and just how people approached both of those during the time. And obviously it's pretty extreme and most people aren't going to be going around doing the sort of things he writes about, but it's just an interesting look at his mind. He's a fascinating figure anyway, so if you have the opportunity, do read a biography about him, because he's very interesting in his own right, aside from his writing. Moving along, on number 6, we have The Mysteries of Udolpho. So this is the Anne Radcliffe work that I've picked for this list. I am an R between this one and The Romance of the Forest. Is it called The Romance of the Forest? Oh my goodness, the name's gone from my mind for a second. I'm pretty sure it is. I'll correct myself on the text if I'm wrong. I actually prefer one or two of her other works, but this is the really big, well-known one, and it includes all those great Gothic components that you'd expect, you know, the sort of innocent young virginal girl, and the spooky locale, and the mysterious family history that's going on around this place. So Gothic is so important in the 18th century as part of the literature and the sort of mentality, particularly towards the end of the century. So you should definitely check out some of Anne Radcliffe's works. Now 7 and 8 I'm going to kind of discuss together, because in some ways they're both linked. The first is Candide by Voltaire, and the second is Julie, or La Nouvelle Héloïse by Rousseau. Voltaire and Rousseau, such important key thinkers from the period, from the Enlightenment. I don't think you can really study 18th century literature without looking at them at least briefly, even if some of the sort of social contract kind of stuff is a little bit heavy perhaps from Rousseau, but I mean some of his other stuff is really great reading. And again, it's just another way of glimpsing through literature what people were thinking about at the time, how their minds were working, what their preoccupations were. Number 9, Back to the Sex Guys for Fanny Hill by John Cleland. Again, I consider this one a little bit like the Marquis de Sade's writing, in that it's just a really interesting snapshot of the sort of things that people were titillated by, the sort of things they were getting up to, the sort of things they wanted to be getting up to maybe if they weren't. I've got a version of Fanny Hill here that has some illustrations which I won't show for the purposes of this video because they are quite graphic. But it is just a really intriguing piece. And finally, back to the Gothic with The Castle of Otranto by Horace Walpole. Now this is credited as being the first Gothic novel. I don't think it's as well written as works by people like Radcliffe and Lewis. However, I couldn't not include it because as the first of its kind, it kind of set not the scale really, but it kind of set in stone the elements that you'd include in a Gothic novel. It has all those that are then repeated throughout Radcliffe's works and everyone else who followed. So just as a student of the Gothic, you'd want to check that one out as you go through. So those are just a few of my favourites from the 18th century. The 18th century is a period I absolutely adore. It's one of my favourite historical periods, particularly the latter half of the 18th century into the Regency. And it has some really great literature to offer. There is a preoccupation with sort of sex and that sort of thing in the literature, but I think that just reflects on the times in which it was written. If anyone has any other 18th century favourites they want to share, pop them in the comments. I'd be really thrilled to discuss with you, and do share your thoughts. Are there any top 10s I haven't done yet that you'd like me to do? I do have a few planned over the coming months, but if there's any you'd like me to do, let me know and I'll do my best to film them for you. Bye bye for now.